next board member is Nancy Jester.
So I'm the mom of 3 kids in elementary school, and they go to public school in DeKalb County. And when my first child was the only one I had in elementary school at the time, that's when I decided to run for the board. I ran because what I saw at the time in 2010 was what I called the twin deficits at that time. We had credibility deficit with the community, still have that. And we had student achievement deficit, still have that. I saw as a citizen and as a parent, I just felt like I had to get involved in reforming those problems because while I'm the mother of my 3 Jester children, I don't have the opportunity to give that level of attention to each child. And I worry about the world they're all inheriting. So I thought, you know, this is a way to help affect that because I want to be able to tell my children I did what I could to make sure you had a stable world, educated world, a prosperous world where everybody felt they had opportunity. So I ran for the board and I was fortunate to win and I appreciate the privilege to serve. I brought with me the thought that we had these twin deficits. When I came to the board, and you start peeling back the layers and becoming part of the entity and learning what your packet looks like, what you're reviewing, we peeled back more layers, and I became very well aware of the developing budget crisis that really set my hair on fire, I thought, at the time. And I did alert my board members to it. I spoke at almost every single board meeting about it. I received some support, some, you know, mostly it was just kind of calm, silent running. This goes over from another administration into the current administration. I saw what I considered deceptive budgeting practices, certainly unsound budgeting practices, and I began to look into that and ask questions. This dovetails into some of the questions you've asked about what kind of training we could have that would be better, that would help us. I have some thoughts about that, and I'll get to that in a second. But when I would ask questions, I would be misled by staff. And I have the dates and times, you can check the tapes. I would often ask about why we were over budget on this item or that item, those explicit items that are mentioned in the report. That comes from me, that comes from the work that I did on those issues. And I got answers that demonstrably were false. I was often told, well, it's a weather issue, but it couldn't have been a weather issue because our expenses in those areas were remarkably consistent over 5 and 6 years. So I didn't understand why you would budget so much lower than what you knew you were going to have. And I didn't get a lot of traction on the board for that. So we progressed, we have new administration, and I will say this is one area where I know going forward I'm feeling more confident about the board and the administration. I will give kudos there. Our fiscal year 13 budget has realistic assumptions in it, and I give credit to the new superintendent and her new CFO. So we have a new financial team that I think they're professional. They seem to have an understanding of this. The budget is reality based. Whether any one particular item is something I like or don't like, the budget is reality based, and it's not built to have these sort of deficits eat away at the accumulated reserves that have been built over the long history of the district. So what the report didn't say, and I wish it did say, and it's another area where we are improving, but it should have been stated that we have been operating on a cash basis of accounting and reporting to board members on a monthly basis, and this is very risky. I think that as board members, boards that predated me, so I came on in January 2011, what we saw was an overstatement of what the reserves would really look like. They'd make a budget based on that rosy scenario, and you would see basically the whittling away of reserves. And that's how we got to the place we got to. And so I was concerned about that. I don't know why that wasn't mentioned in the report. I do think it's worth noting. Our new CFO is moving us to an accrual or modified accrual-based system, so I'm very pleased with that because, of course, the fixed liabilities, those salaries at the end of a fiscal year, but accruing back to that year, need to be in there. You need to book that liability properly. So we're doing that, and I'm happy about that. And we have those realistic assumptions. You know, and I'm certainly committed, as I have always been committed, to moving the district forward. I am committed to continuing to be a watchful steward of the finances, continuing to make sure we're aligning our resources to answer these twin deficits that I saw when I came into the board: student achievement and credibility with the citizens of DeKalb. I think we've made some motions in that direction. We have a long way to go to get there. But I'm certainly committed to being collaborative and working to customize a solution that I think fits a lot of the unique problems we have in DeKalb. I wrote down, we're in an iPod world, so we have to toss out the 8 tracks. And that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges facing us. We have to change the culture. The culture was noted in this. It must change. It's got to be different. And this isn't, that part isn't necessarily unique to DeKalb. I know a lot of school districts and, you know, are struggling with making these changes too, but it's particularly profound here, and it's just really highlighted by the physical challenges we've encountered and faced. Let me see, I have my notes, going over my notes here. So in particular, I'm struck by our graduation rate. And this is a state issue as well as a DeKalb issue, and the new calculation method is laid bare where we are, and it's particularly profound in DeKalb. So I'm definitely committed to that because I think to not urgently address it is inherently leaving not a stable and prosperous environment for all of our children. And I'll just go ahead and answer a question that that's been posted to several of my board members about training, what kind of training would help. We started actually to have this type of training, and we only had one session of it. And I always wondered why and I asked her, we need to do this again, which was training cross-pollinated with staff. We've had a lot of board training, we've had a lot of leadership training, we all do our GSBA things, but part of the problem is rapport building with staff, because we do have a situation where we have had staff, like I said before, I mean, I've had staff give me inaccurate answers. And so we have new people in, and you're trying to build a rapport, but you're also dealing with the history. They may not realize the history and the credibility issues that when you're coming from out of state, you're a new hire. So we have to address those credibility issues, and that means sometimes we do have to ask, we have to go through this process of building this rapport so that the public can see and we can feel comfortable about the credibility the new staff is bringing in, which I do see, and especially with financial rapport. So I think that cross-pollinated training with staff, we did one session of that. I loved it and found it real insightful and gave me some interesting understanding of staff members, and I think we need to do more of that. So that would be my answer to that question, not just generic leadership training or, and possibly cross-pollinated with financial management, because I realize it's hard to read budgets. It's tough to do these things. That might be some people's bailiwick and just not others. So I think some training there specific to our budget and how we report would be very helpful. The superintendent did have a meeting where she brought in the state auditors, and I thought that was very illuminating, and it solidified some of the things I had thought about the auditing process and what it did recognize, and why some folks felt a little bit more confidence about the audit reports than maybe they should have. And but again, I think training would help that, but the cross-pollinating of staff and board training would be helpful. So that was just I wanted to talk about that question. So again, I'm fully committed to continuing to be watchful of what we have really are 3 deficits now going, I think, in DeKalb, and mindful to remedy those situations.
said you had several interactions with the staff, particularly about maybe financial questions.
Right, yeah.
Did you ever ask about the $12 million that has been drawn from a line of credit for textbooks?
That particular line of credit was approved in 2009, so that predated me on board by 2 years. And I was not aware of the situation with the textbook a line of credit lease, it's referred to 2 different ways, until the new superintendent brought that to my attention. And so, and they are digging through that right now to understand what that money was used for. I mean, that is incredibly troubling. And this goes back to trusting. And I spoke with a former board member who was on the board at the time, and he said, you know, I didn't think to ask, are you going to use the money for something besides textbooks? Because it was called the textbook lease or the textbook line of credit. And so I trusted that that was indeed how it would be used. And I believe that they're going through that process right now to remedy that, to understand what happened there. So I give kudos to the new superintendent about that. And I've certainly followed up with questions about that, spoke about that yesterday with some folks, because I want to know there. I did routinely speak within months of coming on the board about what I saw as the budgeting practices that were problematic.
So you don't know anything more about the $12 million for textbooks?
I'm waiting. No, I'm waiting on that report. I don't have a full briefing on that, and I await that. I know that they are still, the CFO and his team are reviewing that. They do not have a full report for that yet, but that's very troubling.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Jester. You mentioned that you came on this board on January 11th. 2011, excuse me. And I know from our board work that there's a steep learning curve. You were, I assume, very new to the process in January 2011.
That's right. I was sworn in on January 3rd, 2011.
Okay. So at that time, that same month is when DeKalb would have received
Yes.
the first report from SACS.
In fact, either the first or second week I was on the board, I had an interview with SACS, and obviously I was very new to the board at that time. And then we received the report that really dated back to the 2010.
So our the report here tells us that SACS gave a report that January 2011. They did a follow-up review in October of 11 and in March of 12. So through your eyes as a somewhat new board member, or at least new at that time, if you could speak to your perception of how the leadership, the superintendent, and the board at that time reacted to, what did they do with that report and those required actions?
Well, I think everyone is very diligent at looking at it and thinking about it. I think that everyone has good intentions. It's the actions. I mean, I'm an end gamer. I'm like, okay, well, where are we going? Where are we going to finish, and how do we get there? And I think certainly the board has fallen short of that. I mean, clearly we have, because I'm not seeing. We've made some gains in some achievement levels, but we have a long way to go. What I was disturbed about in the reports actually was that in those interim times when we were getting reports, I had been speaking about the budgeting issues, and they never brought those to light. In fact, I think they would check off as operational or budgeting issues or financial status, and that always perplexed me. But I was undeterred and continued to bring it up to the board for the board's attention. And again, I'm happy that the superintendent, our current superintendent, has addressed that. I didn't feel the interim superintendent addressed that. One thing the interim superintendent did well was start a policy review process. That was something she did. Before I came on the board, I remember observing that in the 2010 period before I was on the board, and I thought she came up with a robust plan for doing that. Because that was one of the issues that SACS had in 2010, which was you have some old policies you need to go through, you need to modernize what you have, and so she came up with a very good system. So I felt good about that. not so good about addressing the financial issues. I wasn't seeing, at that time, in 2011, I wouldn't say I had evidence of academic achievement being targeted, that deficit. And really the public engagement credibility issue.
So when I believe I heard you say that you almost immediately became concerned about the financial problems.
Yes, ma'am.
And did you try to talk to your other board members, or
Yes, ma'am.
do you think they were just?
Well, I mean, I faced challenges there. I did bring it up. It was, it was clear to me, and I tried to explain why I believed that it was clear. And I wasn't successful at convincing a majority to look into that, or the staff perhaps either at that time. We had the new financial staff at this point. Some board members tried to disprove me. Some board members did try to say that it was temperature differentials and rate increases, but rate increases and temperature differentials didn't account for 50% increases or being 50% of the budget.
Other questions for Ms. Jester?